Settle in. Get comfortable. Some people carry the weight so long, they forget their own face. Then someone walks into them at a party, and everything shifts. Chapter 1. The Fall. The glass was worth more than her workshop. Josie Penn held it by the stem with 2 fingers and a prayer, hovering it at chest height where it could do the least structural damage, and tried to look like a person who belonged at a royal ball, and not like a chandler in a borrowed dress who had already tripped on her own hem twice, stepped on the train of a baroness, and accidentally told a duke his dining hall had hostile lighting. The duke had not appreciated this. Josie had tried to explain that tallow sconces at that height cast unflattering shadows on anyone seated below 6 feet, and that she could fix it with a beeswax blend and a 40-degree angle adjustment, and the duke had looked at her the way people looked at weather they had not planned for. "You could stop talking," Briar observed. "I was being helpful." "You told a duke his house was ugly." "I told a duke his lighting was hostile. Those are different things. One is an insult and one is a professional observation. Lighting can be hostile. I have strong feelings about this." "You have strong feelings about everything. Last week you apologized to a batch of wax for overheating it." "It's separated. It was upset. You could tell." "It was wax." "Emotionally compromised wax?" This was the thing about Josie. She made candles for a living because wax forgave mistakes. It was the only material she had ever encountered that did. Glass did not. Crystal definitely did not. People were variable, but wax, you could overheat it and it would separate, and you could cool it down and start again, and the next candle would be just as good, and the wax never held it against you. Josie respected wax. She had a relationship with wax. This was possibly unusual, but she had stopped examining it. She was here because she supplied the palace with candles. Beeswax, hand-dipped, lavender-scented for the east wing, unscented for the council chambers, the thick pillar kind for the great hall sconces that burned for 9 hours without guttering. She was good at candles. She was, if she was being honest, exceptional at candles. What she was not exceptional at was royal balls, formal dress codes, standing still, or navigating a room without leaving a trail of minor structural incidents. She had not intended to be at this ball. She had intended to deliver the replacement ballroom sconces, collect her invoice, and leave through the service entrance like a normal person. But the steward had offered her a glass of wine because 2 of her candles had guttered during the last event, and she had come personally to replace them within the hour, and the steward believed in rewarding that kind of service, and 1 glass had become 2, and now she was standing in the middle of a royal ball in a borrowed dress holding crystal stemware and wondering how her evening had gone so structurally wrong. "The hem," Briar said. She looked down. The hem was bunching again. The dress was borrowed, a deep green thing that was beautiful and also 3 inches too long, which meant every step was a negotiation between her body's intentions and the fabric's opinions about those intentions. She reached down to adjust it. Her elbow caught the glass. The glass went up. She caught it, both hands, wine sloshing but contained. She exhaled. Her hip caught the edge of a table. A napkin slid off. She grabbed the napkin. The glass tilted. She corrected the glass. Her foot found a chair leg. She stumbled, caught herself on the back of the chair, and the chair moved 6 inches and bumped the woman standing behind it, who turned, whose elbow caught a passing servant's tray, which tilted but did not fall because the servant was experienced and had probably seen worse. Josie stood in the wreckage of her trajectory, holding a glass of wine that had not spilled and a napkin that did not belong to her, and felt, briefly, like a natural disaster that had been given an invitation. "Impressive," Briar said. 6 objects, 3 people, 1 of you. You are operating at peak efficiency. I saved the wine. You displaced a chair, a napkin, a baroness, a duke's self-esteem, and a servant's faith in formal events. But you saved the wine. This is technically true. Josie turned around. What happened next was simple physics. She turned, and there was a man behind her, and she did not see him because he was standing so still that her pattern recognition had classified him as architecture. And she walked into him with her full weight, and the glass hit his chest, and the wine did not survive this time. Pale gold wine described a perfect arc through the candlelit air and landed on the dark wool coat of the man she had just classified as a wall. The man was Silas Crane. She did not know this yet. What she knew was that she had collided with something that felt like a wall with a heartbeat. Solid, immovable, very warm. Her hands went flat against his chest, which was now very wet, and she looked up into a face that had not changed expression. Steel brown eyes, sharp jaw, a thin white scar across the bridge of his nose, dark hair pushed back, a face assembled from right angles and restraint, a face that looked like it had been built to withstand things and had been withstanding them for a very long time. His eyes were dark, and then, for half a second, they were not. A ring of deep amber surfaced at the edge of his irises, vivid and involuntary, and sank back so fast she almost missed it. Almost. Something hit her. Not physically. Lower, deeper, in the place where her ribs met her spine. A warmth she had no context for, sudden and total, like walking into a room you had never been in and knowing where every piece of furniture was. Recognition. Not of him. Of something about him that her body understood before her mind caught up. "Oh," Breyer said. Not sardonic, not flat. Just, "Oh." The way you say it when the thing you have been theoretically prepared for your entire life arrives without warning in the form of a man you have just poured wine on. "Well," Breyer amended, recovering, "that is spectacularly inconvenient." Josie's hands were still on his chest. His coat was still wet. The entire ballroom was still happening. She was standing with her palms flat on the Alpha King's beta, and her borrowed dress was bunched at her ankles, and there was wine on both of them, and his face had not moved. Not a flicker, not a twitch. The expression of a man reviewing a tax amendment. "You're standing on my foot," he said. She looked down. She was, in fact, standing on his foot. "Oh, no. Oh, I'm so sorry. I am. The thing is, the dress is too long, and the glass was... I didn't mean to. I'm not usually... I am usually, but not at... I make candles." She was gesturing with the empty glass. "I'm the candle person. I supply the East Wing sconces. The beeswax ones. They burn for 9 hours. I'm very good at candles. I am genuinely terrible at..." She gestured at the room, the floor, the concept of formal events. "All of this. I once broke a window by putting a teacup down too enthusiastically. I don't know how that's possible either. It shouldn't be possible. It was architecturally improbable. A man used that exact phrase. I apologized to the window." She paused. "I'm also sorry about your coat, and your foot, and the floor. I should apologize to the floor." She looked at the floor. "Sorry," she told it. Inside Silas Crane's chest, in the place where a wolf named Flint had been quiet and steady and dutiful for 9 years, something detonated. "Hers," Flint said. Not a question. A geological event. The word arrived like bedrock shifting, like something that had been still for so long that the stillness itself had become load-bearing, and now the load was moving. Hers. She smells like beeswax and lavender and something warm like bread just out of the oven. And hers, Silas. She is ours, and she fell on us, and it was perfect. And she apologized to the floor, Silas. She apologized to the floor, and I have been waiting, and she is right here, and our chest is wet, and I do not care about our chest." Silas said nothing. His face remained exactly as it was. He took the empty glass from her hand, set it on the nearest table, and took the napkin from her other hand and dabbed his coat once. "The East Wing sconces," he said. His voice was level, controlled. The voice of a man who had just experienced the single most overwhelming moment of his life and was handling it with the same affect he used to deny trade amendments. "Those are yours." "Yes, the beeswax ones. They burn for 9 hours. Did I say that already? I think I said that already. I have a theory about wick placement that affects burn duration, and I am trying very hard not to tell you about it right now because this is a ball and not a candle seminar. But I need you to know that wick placement matters. It matters enormously, and most people don't." "They're adequate," Silas said. He turned and walked away. He walked in the wrong direction, away from the door, into the far wall of the ballroom. He stopped, corrected course with the precision of a man executing a tactical withdrawal, and exited through the correct door without looking back. Josie stood in the middle of the royal ballroom, holding a wet napkin and wearing a borrowed dress with wine on the bodice, and the expression of a woman who had just been hit by something she could not see. "He walked into a wall," Breyer said, flat, the steady hum of a wolf who had just watched the most feared man in the 9 territories lose his sense of direction because a chandler fell on him. "The Alpha King's Beta, the stone wall of the Northern Territories, the man who has not smiled in 9 years. He walked into an actual, literal wall because of you. I want this on the record." "What just happened?" "You fell on a man, poured wine on him, stood on his foot, apologized to the floor, and told him about wick placement. He walked into a wall. I believe these events are related." "No, the thing in my chest." "I know what you mean." "Was that?" "Yes." Josie pressed the wet napkin to her own face and breathed into it. "Beeswax and lavender," Breyer said quietly. "And his coat smelled like cold iron and cedar. You were wondering." She had been wondering. She hated that she had been wondering. He did not sleep. Silas sat at his desk in the dark and did not think about the woman who had apologized to a floor and smelled like every warm thing he had forgotten the name of. "Hers," Flint said, again. The word had been running for 4 hours. "She is a chandler who talks to floors." "She is a chandler who talks to floors, and she makes candles that burn for 9 hours, and she has a theory about wick placement, and she apologized to the floor, Silas. She apologized to it like it had feelings." "It doesn't have feelings. It's a floor." "She thinks it might. That is the most magnificent thing a person has ever thought. She extends courtesy to architecture." "It was not magnificent. It was a beverage incident." "It was fate. It was fate in a green dress with wax in her hair, and she broke a window once by putting a teacup down too enthusiastically, and she does not know how that is possible either. And I am in love, Silas. I am in love with a woman who cannot be in a room without the room knowing about it." Something happened to Silas's mouth. Not a smile. A micro-event. A twitch at the corner that appeared and vanished so fast that anyone watching would have questioned whether it happened at all. But no one was watching. And Flint was watching. "Our face moved," Flint whispered. "Our face did a thing, because of the teacup. The window. The architecturally improbable teacup. Our face moved, Silas." "Our face did not move." "It did. I was there. I am always here. And it moved." Silas put his hands flat on the desk. He had been the beta for 9 years. He had not smiled because smiling was something that belonged to a person, and Silas Crane had not been a person in 9 years. He had been a function. Functions did not smile. Functions definitely did not smile because a woman had apologized to a floor. "She stood on our foot," Flint said, softer, the surge retreating into something bruised. "She stood right on our foot, and she smelled like everything we have been missing. And she told us about wick placement, and I don't want to go back to before, Silas. I have been quiet for so long. Please don't make me go back to quiet." He did not answer. He sat in the dark, and his wolf was loud for the first time in 9 years, and the room smelled like cold iron and cedar and, faintly, from the places where her hands had pressed against his coat, beeswax and lavender. Chapter 2. Adequate. She burned 3 batches before noon because she kept forgetting to watch the temperature. The first batch went cloudy. The second separated. The third did something she had never seen wax do before, which was bubble in a way that suggested the wax itself was having a personal crisis. "I'm sorry," she told the third batch. "I know this is my fault. I wasn't paying attention to your needs." "You are apologizing to wax," Briar said. "I overheated it. It has a right to be upset." "It is wax. It does not have rights. It does not have emotions. It is a petroleum byproduct." "Beeswax is not a petroleum byproduct. Beeswax is an ancient and dignified substance produced by creatures who have been making architecture for 60 million years, and I will not have it disrespected in my workshop." "You are picking a fight with me about wax." "I'm defending wax. Those are different things." She loaded the delivery cart at 1. 24 pillar candles, beeswax, lavender-scented, each one hand-dipped and hand-checked. She apologized to the ones on the bottom row for bearing the weight. She arrived at the palace service entrance at 1:30. She was met by the steward, who was not the steward. The steward was Silas Crane. He was standing at the service entrance in his formal beta attire, dark wool coat with silver clasps, every button fastened, looking at her candle cart with the expression of a man inspecting a border fortification. "He's here," Briar said. "The beta of the 9 territories is personally attending a candle delivery. I have concerns." "I'm here for the East Wing delivery." "I'm aware." He looked at the cart. "I'm conducting an inspection." "Of candles." "Of palace supplies." "You personally inspect palace supplies?" "When necessary." She pulled the first crate from the cart. It was heavier than she expected, and the crate tilted, and the candles shifted, and the crate left her hands. He caught it. One hand, no effort, the way someone catches something they have already calculated the trajectory of. Their fingers overlapped on the edge of the crate. His hand was warm. The cold iron and cedar scent hit her like walking into a room with a fire she had not known was burning. Her eyes had changed. He noticed it the way he noticed everything, without deciding to. The warm brown had gone darker, steadier, the focus behind them not quite social, not quite human. Something in her had gone very still, the kind of still that had nothing to do with not moving, and everything to do with paying a different kind of attention. He took the crate, set it down. The contact broke. They unloaded the rest. She dropped a candle. He caught it before it hit the ground. She dropped another. He caught that one too. She dropped a third, and this time he had already moved his hand to where it was going to fall before it left her grip. She stared at him. "How did you know I was going to drop that one?" "You shift your weight to the left before you lose something. The pattern is consistent." "You've calculated my dropping pattern?" "It's not a pattern, it's a trajectory." "He has mapped your clumsiness," Briar said, "like a military campaign. He is predicting your disasters. This man has a problem, and the problem is you." She was still staring at him. Her head was tilted the way a wolf tilts its head, the unconscious angle of an animal reading something it cannot quite categorize. She had a smudge of wax on her forearm, and pins losing their war with her hair, and she was looking at him with the expression of a woman who is trying to file someone under a category that did not exist. "These candles," she said, picking up one of the fallen ones and holding it up between them. "This candle, do you know what makes it different from a tallow candle?" "I don't." "Beeswax has a memory. Not a literal memory, but a cellular one. The structure of the wax remembers the hive. The hexagonal comb, the temperature, the geometry of 10,000 bees building something together. When you burn a beeswax candle, you are burning architecture. 60-million-year-old architecture. I think about this constantly. He looked at her. She looked at him. The candle was between them. The service corridor was stone and shadow and utterly silent. Something happened to his breathing, a short exhalation that was not quite a laugh and not quite anything else. A sound his body made without his permission, the acoustic equivalent of a system encountering an input it had no protocol for. He did not notice the sound. Josie did not notice the sound. Flint noticed the sound. "That was a laugh," Flint said. That was not a laugh. That was the ghost of a laugh. That was the evolutionary ancestor of a laugh. Something happened in our respiratory system because she told us that beeswax has a memory, and our body did a thing, and These are adequate candles, Silas said. Adequate? We are doing this again? She just told us about 60 million years of bee architecture, and we said adequate. They unloaded the remaining crates in silence. Efficient. Their hands did not touch again because they were both aware of where the other person's hands were and were navigating accordingly. She paused at the last crate, looked at the candles inside. She picked one up, held it to the light, squinted at it, and put it back. "What are you doing?" "Checking on them. This one tilted during transit. I want to make sure the wick didn't shift." "You are checking on your candles' well-being. They've had a long cart ride. Some of them aren't used to travel." He stared at her. She was holding a candle up to the window light and examining its wick with the focused intensity of a woman performing triage, and she was completely serious, and his managed face, his political mask, the composure he had maintained through 2 border disputes and a trade war and 9 years of stone, had no category for a woman who checked on candles' well-being after cart rides. "Do you think they have feelings?" she asked, still examining the wick. "No. I think they might. I think the ones on the bottom of the crate know they're on the bottom. I apologized to them earlier, before loading." She put the candle back, gently. "You probably think that's strange." He did think it was strange. He also thought it was the most specific and genuine thing he had heard anyone say in 9 years, because everyone he spoke to was performing something, managing something, holding a face in place the way he held a face in place, and this woman was not holding anything in place. She was exactly what she was. Every piece of her was visible. She extended courtesy to wax and apologized to floors, and had opinions about lighting so strong they constituted a world view. And nothing about her was managed, and standing near her was like standing next to an open window after 9 years in a sealed room. "It's not strange," he said. She looked up at him. Something in her face went soft, not performed soft, actually soft, and her warm brown eyes did the thing again, the darkening, the steady focus that was not quite human, the wolf looking through. "Good afternoon, Silas," she said. She left. He stood in the service corridor, holding a candle she had checked on, and watching her pull her empty cart through the door. And his hand on the candle was careful in a way he did not examine. And Flint was saying, "Hers, hers, hers," so quietly it was almost just warmth. He put the candle in his pocket. This was becoming a pattern he could not explain and did not want to stop. She came back Thursday. Because she had miscounted the East Wing order. She had not miscounted the East Wing order. She had made 4 extra candles at midnight because she could not sleep. These were not standard candles. One was dyed blue, which the East Wing had never ordered. One was hexagonal, which the East Wing had definitely never ordered. One had rosemary infused into it, as an experiment. The 4th was normal, but slightly too tall. "I miscounted," she said, holding 4 candles that were visibly, obviously, not part of any standard order. Silas looked at the candles. He looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Not the amber. Something human and very close to the surface. "One of those is blue," he said. "It's a subtle blue." It's very blue. The thing is, I was experimenting with pigment absorption rates, and the blue got away from me. Beeswax is an eager absorber. I should have accounted for its enthusiasm. You're describing wax as enthusiastic. Some waxes are more enthusiastic than others. Beeswax in particular it takes on pigment the way some people take on hobbies, completely and without moderation. He took the candles, all 4, including the blue one, including the hexagonal one, including the one that smelled like rosemary and good intentions. These are very well made, he said. Not adequate, very well made. The words came out like they had been carried a long distance. She smiled, not at the compliment, at the effort it had taken to say something that was not adequate, at the way his jaw had worked around the words like a man trying to operate machinery he had not used in years. You should try the rosemary one, she said. Light it in the evening. Rosemary is clarifying. It helps with thinking. You seem like a man who does a lot of thinking. And some of your thinking seems like it might be the kind of thinking that goes in circles, and rosemary is good for circles. She paused. I am hearing myself, and I am aware this sounds like I am prescribing you aromatherapy. I am not. I am prescribing you a candle. There is a difference, and the difference is that candles are better than therapy, because candles do not ask follow-up questions. His jaw did the thing. The muscle at the hinge tightened and released and tightened again, and there was a flash of something at the edges of his eyes, the amber, surfacing because his wolf was responding to a woman who had just prescribed him a candle with the conviction of a doctor issuing medication. He watched her go. He put the blue candle on his desk. He did not examine why. He put the normal one in his coat pocket. He had never put a candle in his coat pocket. He was becoming a person who carried a candle, and he did not know what to do with this information. And Flint said nothing, and the nothing Flint said was the gentlest sound in 9 years. Chapter 3. The Muscle. She kept appearing, not deliberately. Josie got lost in the palace. This was consistent with her general relationship to architecture, which was adversarial. She took wrong turns. She ended up in corridors she had never seen. She once walked into the council antechamber because she thought it was the way to the service wing, and told 2 startled advisors that their sconces were criminally underpowered, before realizing where she was and backing out with the apologetic energy of a woman who had once again found herself in a room she was not meant to be in. Which meant Silas kept finding her. In corridors, in courtyards. Once in the palace library, where she had wandered in looking for the service stairs and had become distracted by a candelabra that she was examining with the focused intensity of a surgeon. That's a 15th century ceremonial candelabra, he said from behind her. She jumped, knocked a book off a shelf, caught the book. Her elbow hit the candelabra. He caught the candelabra. It's the wrong alloy, she said, as if he had not just prevented a diplomatic incident. This is a brass-zinc blend. It's fighting the heat distribution. The wax is pooling asymmetrically. Look. She pointed. The wax was, in fact, pooling asymmetrically. If they'd used a copper-heavy alloy, the heat would distribute evenly, and the candles would burn 30% longer. I have very strong opinions about this. I've noticed. On Thursday, she was unloading candles and a palace guard walked too close while she was reaching into a crate. Silas's chest produced a sound, low, brief, a vibration more than a noise. The guard stopped, looked at the beta, took 2 steps back. Josie, who was elbow-deep in a crate of candles and muttering to them about being patient, did not notice the growl. She did notice the guard's face. "Are you all right?" she asked the guard. "Fine," the guard said, in the voice of a man who had just heard the stone wall of the Northern Territories growl at him and was reconsidering his career choices. On the following Tuesday, she stayed late replacing sconces in the lower corridor. She was scraping old wax from the iron fittings and having a one-sided conversation with the sconces about their potential when he found her. "You're talking to the wall fixtures," he said. She didn't startle this time. She was getting used to him appearing. "I'm encouraging them. These sconces are from the original installation, and they've been holding tallow for decades. They deserve to know they're about to hold something better. You're giving motivational speeches to metalwork. Everyone deserves encouragement, even metalwork." They walked toward the service entrance together, side by side, not touching. The corridor was narrow and the light was gold. She stopped. He stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why haven't you smiled in 9 years?" The question landed like a stone in still water. His jaw tightened. "My father was the beta before me," he said. He had not planned to say this, but the corridor was quiet, and she was looking at him with warm brown eyes that did not look away when things got heavy. "He died. Border conflict. I was 20. I stepped into the role. And you stopped smiling. Everything that wasn't the job fell away. One thing at a time. The smiling went early. I didn't notice until it was gone." "You didn't notice you stopped smiling?" "People don't notice when a wall goes up. They just notice when they can't get through anymore." She was quiet. Then she said, "I make candles because when I was 12, my mother's workshop burned down. Tallow fire. She lost everything. And the next morning she got up and started again, with nothing, and by that evening she had 3 candles drying on a rack. And I watched her, and I thought, that's what I want. Not the candles, the getting up, the starting again part." She looked at the wall. She looked at him. "Walls can have doors in them, Silas." Something in his face moved, not his mouth, something underneath. His eyes changed, the dark brown warming, the amber emerging, and for a moment his face was a window. Then it closed. "We should get you to the entrance," he said. She reached out and put her hand on his arm. Light, deliberate. Her fingers on the dark wool of his coat. Her breathing had changed, slower, deeper. The intake of someone scenting something, reading the air the way a wolf reads a room before deciding to stay. Her warm brown eyes had a ring of something at the edges, not amber like his, darker, a deepening, as if the wolf behind them had moved closer to the surface. "Your mouth just moved," she said. "My mouth did not move." The corner, right there. She pointed at his face. It went up, by maybe a millimeter. That was not. It was a smile. A very small, very frightened, very reluctant smile. It was a minor involuntary contraction of the zygomaticus major. She blinked. "You know the name of the smile muscle?" "I know the name of every muscle." "Do you know what it looks like?" She opened her mouth, wide, pointed at her own teeth, made the most exaggerated, least dignified facial expression he had ever seen, a caricature of human joy, the kind of face that belonged on a carnival puppet, and she held it, pointing at her own stretched mouth with one finger, and said through her teeth, "Thith ith a thmile." Something happened. He laughed. It was short, involuntary. A single sound, closer to a bark than a laugh, startled out of him like a bird flushed from cover. It was over in half a second, and he looked genuinely alarmed by it, the way a man looks when his own body does something it has not done in 9 years and he does not have the paperwork for it. She dropped the smile demonstration. Her real face replaced it, warm brown eyes wide. Was that a laugh? No. That was a laugh. It was a respiratory event. It was a laugh. Silas Crane, the stone wall of the Northern Territories, just laughed because I did a face. I did not laugh because you did a face. We laughed because she did a face, Flint confirmed. We laughed. We laughed. Our body produced a laugh. We have not laughed in 9 years, and she made a face, and we... Good night, Silas said. He walked her to the service entrance. At the door, she turned. Tuesday, she said. Tuesday. She smiled. He did not smile, but the corner of his mouth, the millimeter, did the thing again. The zygomaticus major, contracting without authorization. That's twice, Flint whispered. A laugh and a millimeter. In one evening. I am making a chart. Silas closed the door, leaned his forehead against it, breathed. The laugh was still in his chest. He could feel it, the aftershock, the strange muscular memory of a sound his body had made without asking. It had been short, half a second. But half a second was more than 9 years of nothing, and the distance between nothing and half a second was apparently infinite. We laughed, Flint said, not shouting, not surging. The earnest thing, the bedrock, the part of Flint that was not performance. We laughed, and it sounded like us. Not the beta, us. The version of us that exists behind the wall. He's in there, Silas. He has been in there the whole time. And she found him by making a face. He stood with his forehead against the door, and the corridor dark around him, and his coat smelling like cold iron and cedar and, from the places where her hand had rested on his arm, beeswax and lavender. And the echo of a laugh he did not know he still had. She found him in the courtyard 3 nights later. He was sitting on the low wall by the fountain, coat unbuttoned, hands on his knees, palms up, looking at the sky with the expression of a man who had run out of things to hold up and was trying to remember what his arms were for when they were not carrying weight. She sat near him. Not close, just present, the way you sit near someone who has been alone for a very long time and has forgotten what company feels like. He did not ask why she was there. She did not explain. For a while they sat with nothing between them but the moonlight and the ivy, and the sound of the palace settling into its own stones. I got lost again, she said. I was looking for the south gate. I ended up here. This is not the south gate. This is the north courtyard. That explains the direction discrepancy. She looked at the fountain. The fountain was off. This is a nice fountain. I could fix the lighting. The fountain doesn't have lighting. Exactly. That's what I would fix. You put 3 beeswax pillars along the rim, stagger the heights, and the reflection off the water creates a secondary light source that makes the whole courtyard feel warmer. I've been thinking about this for possibly too long. You've been thinking about my courtyard's lighting? I think about most things lighting. It's a problem I have. They were quiet again. The quiet was different now, not the quiet of 2 strangers. The quiet of 2 people who had been circling each other for weeks and had arrived at the same place at the same time and were not pretending it was an accident. I don't know who I am without the wall, he said. Not to her, exactly. To the sky, to the courtyard, to the wolf who was listening with the patient warmth of a creature who had been waiting 9 years for this sentence. I've been the beta for so long. The wall, the gate, the thing everyone walks into and can't get through. And if I take the wall down, what's behind it? What if there's nothing behind it? She thought about this. Not quickly. She sat with it the way you sit with something that matters. You know what's behind a wall? What? A room. There's always a room. I know because I walk into walls fairly regularly, and there is always a room on the other side. Admittedly, sometimes it's the wrong room. I once ended up in your council antechamber and told 2 advisors their sconces were criminally underpowered. But the room was there. The room is always there. He turned his head and looked at her. Moonlight on his face, the scar across his nose, the amber in his eyes, steady and warm. And his mouth did the thing again. The corner, not quite a smile but closer, the millimeter becoming something more. Because she had taken his most vulnerable confession and answered it with the same absolute sincerity and architectural metaphor she applied to everything. And his composure had no protocol for that. She keeps doing this, Flint said. Quiet, not a surge, the earnest thing underneath, open and aching. She keeps saying the exact right thing in the most impossible way. She answers gravity with a story about getting lost. She treats everything the same, everything, the wax and the sconces and us. All of it gets the same kindness. And it is undoing us, and I do not want it to stop. She reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were steady. Her pulse against his palm was not. He could feel it, fast and certain, the heartbeat of something that had decided the way a wolf decides. Without committee, without review, just the clean animal certainty of yes. His fingers closed around hers, warm and careful. The grip of a man who was used to holding things that could break, and had just been handed something he was terrified of breaking. They sat in the courtyard in the dark, and the moonlight came through the ivy, and neither of them said anything. And the silence between them was the kind of silence that is not empty. It is just a room, with both of them in it. Chapter 4. The Assessment. He had left the assessment on his desk. This was unlike him. Silas did not leave documents out. He filed correspondence within the hour. He locked sensitive reports in the lower drawer. He had maintained immaculate operational security for 9 years because operational security was what he had instead of a personality. But the assessment was on the desk, face up, where anyone who walked in would see it. "You know she comes on Tuesdays," Flint said. Quiet, not a surge. "You know she replaces the candle. You know she will be in this room. And the assessment is on the desk." "I forgot to file it." "You have never forgotten to file anything in 9 years. He looked at the document. He did not move it. He went to the council chamber. The document stayed on the desk. She found it an hour later. She was in his study replacing the candle on his desk, the lavender one, the one he thought she didn't know he kept. She was introducing the new candle to its surroundings. "This is the desk," she told it quietly, settling it into the holder. "It's a good desk, solid. You're going to be here for about a week. The window is east-facing, so you'll get morning light, which is nice. The man who sits here is very large and very serious, and he will pretend he doesn't notice you, but he keeps his hand near you when he's thinking, so I think he likes the company." "You are giving a candle an orientation tour," Breyer said. "It's in a new environment. That's stressful." "It is wax, in a holder, on a desk. Transitions are hard for everyone." "You are building something," Breyer said. Not sardonic. The other register, the quiet one underneath. "You know what happens to things you build." Josie knew. Her mother's workshop, the tallow fire. The morning after, when the shelves were ash and the molds were warped, and the woman who had built everything sat in the wreckage and got up and started again. Josie had learned 2 things from that morning: how to rebuild and what it cost. She was building something now with a man who filed his feelings in subsections, and the part of her that tracked exits before she sat down, the wolf part, the part that had watched her mother's face in the ashes, was already calculating what it would cost to start again if this one burned too. The document was on his desk. She should not have read it. She read it. Formal assessment, Beta Office. Confirmed mate bond, Silas Crane, Beta, and Josie Penn, Omega, Civilian. Section 1. Bond confirmation. Section 2. Timeline of contact events. Section 3. Assessment of operational impact. Section 4. Logistical considerations regarding cohabitation. Section 5. Protocol compliance review. Section 6. Recommended disclosure timeline. Section 7. Risk mitigation. Section 8. Contingency framework. She read it twice. Section 4 included a subsection on workspace proximity analysis, with a table quantifying the square footage of her workshop. Section 7 had a risk matrix, with her name in it, color-coded. Something in her chest went cold. He came in. He saw her face. He saw the document. "Josie." She held up the assessment. Her hand was steady, the candlemaker's hand. Section 4, she said. Logistical considerations regarding cohabitation. You measured my workshop. You calculated the square footage. You have a subsection about my workshop's proximity to the palace service wing. The assessment is standard. Section 7. Risk mitigation. You have a risk mitigation plan for us. You have a contingency table for a mate bond. The contingency table is standard. I have survived tallow fires and dropped a crystal bowl at the Harvest Festival, and was once asked to leave a pottery shop for structural reasons, and I apologize to Floors, and I give candles orientation tours, and none of it, has ever been as strange as being filed. She set the document on the desk, carefully. You took the thing in the courtyard and the thing in the corridor and the laugh, Silas, the first one in 9 years, and you put them in sections and subsections and a contingency table. She is right, Flint said, very quiet. We put home in a spreadsheet. I am not a problem you manage, Silas. I am a person who chose to stand on your foot. She left. The candle on his desk burned. The new one. The one she had just introduced to its surroundings. The room smelled like beeswax and lavender, and the specific scent of someone leaving. Silas stood with his fists at his sides and the assessment on the desk, and did not move for a very long time. Chapter 5. The room behind the wall, he went to the king first. Rafe was in his study, boots on the desk. He looked at Silas's face. He put his boots down. I need to tender my resignation as Beta. No. I'm serious. You're always serious. That's the problem. Rafe leaned forward. Silas, you don't get to resign because you're afraid of a chandler who gives candles orientation tours. How do you know about? Everyone knows about it. The guards have been talking about it for weeks. The stone wall of the Northern Territories has been personally inspecting candle deliveries and carrying a candle in his coat pocket, and his face almost did a thing in a corridor, and the entire palace is losing its mind. Rafe looked at him. I tried, years ago. Year 2, year 3. I stopped because you couldn't hear it from me. Some walls need a specific person to walk into them. He paused. Apparently that person apologizes to Floors and has opinions about lighting. Go tell her. Not in sections, in words. He went. He walked through the palace and out the service entrance, and through the village streets in the late afternoon light, and he was still wearing his Beta coat, and people moved out of his way the way they always moved, and his hands were open, and his jaw was set, and he was walking toward a candle shop like a man walking toward the edge of something he could not see the bottom of. Her workshop was small. Stone walls, a wooden door with a brass latch. The window glowed amber from inside. The scent hit him from 20 paces, beeswax and lavender. He stood in the doorway. She was at her workbench. She was talking to a wick. You went in crooked, she was telling it. I know. It's not your fault. It's my fault. I wasn't paying attention because I was thinking about a man who filed me in a contingency table. And you deserve better than that. You deserve my full attention, and I'm sorry. She straightened the wick, gently. With the focused care of a woman who extended courtesy to everything, who apologized to Floors, and gave candles orientation tours, and treated wax like a living thing, and walked through the world leaving a trail of knocked-over objects and startled dukes and broken pottery and kindness. So much kindness. Kindness extended in every direction, including downward to the materials and the furniture and the ground itself. Something happened in his chest. Not a laugh. Not the bark from the corridor. Something quieter. A warmth that had no sound but felt like a sound. The feeling of watching someone be so completely, unreservedly themselves that your own self, the one you buried under 9 years of stone, begins to remember what it felt like to be a person. I withdrew the assessment, he said. She turned. Her face did several things at once. Good. I burned the contingency table. Also good. He stepped into the workshop. The candlelight was on his face. I don't know how to do this, he said. Not the beta, not the managed mode. Just his voice, raw and unpracticed. I have been the wall for so long. I don't know how to be a door. And I'm terrified that if it comes down, there's nothing behind it. The room isn't empty, Silas. She wiped wax from her hands, walked toward him. I've been in it. I've been standing in it for weeks. It's a perfectly good room. It has, I think, some structural issues, and the lighting is terrible, but I have strong opinions about lighting, and I can fix that. She was fixing his lighting. She was standing in front of him, telling him that his soul had bad lighting, and she could fix it. And she was completely serious, and she meant it the way she meant everything, which was with her entire body and her entire self, and no awareness whatsoever that this was not how people normally talked about emotional vulnerability. His face broke. Not a millimeter. Not the zygomaticus major contracting without authorization. It started as a laugh, short and helpless and surprised out of him by a woman who had just diagnosed his emotional fortress as a lighting problem. And the laugh cracked something open, and behind the crack was the smile. Slow, tired, broken in places. The smile of a man who was doing something his face had not done since he was 20 years old, and the effort was visible in every line, and the beauty was visible in every line. And it kept going. It did not stop. Because she was looking at him, and the wall was not there, and for the first time in 9 years, his face was doing the thing it was built to do, and he did not know how to stop it, and he did not want to stop it. There, Flint said. Not a word, a sound. The sound a wolf makes when the thing it has been guarding for 9 years is finally safe. There it is. There you are. She reached up and put her hands on his face, both sides, thumbs at the jaw, at the hinge that had been clenched for 9 years. She held his face in her hands, wax-burned fingers against his jaw, and the smile was under her palms, and she could feel it, the muscles working, the unfamiliar motion, the man behind the wall learning how to be a face again. There you are, she said. They stood like that for a long time, his face under her hands, the candles burning around them. Beeswax and lavender in the air, warm and golden. His eyes were dark and wet and gold at the edges, and completely, entirely open. Not the beta. Not the managed mode. Not the man who governed through architecture and formal assessments. Just Silas. A man whose face was remembering something it had forgotten, and the remembering hurt, and the hurt was good, and the woman who had caused it was standing right here with wax on her forearms and her hands on his jaw, and she was not leaving. He kissed her. Not hard, not desperate, the way a man kisses someone when he has been waiting 9 years and has finally stopped waiting. Slow, warm. His hands came up, open hands, not fists, one at the small of her back and one cupping the back of her head, fingers in her honey blonde hair, and she kissed him back, and the world narrowed to a candle shop in the late afternoon with beeswax and lavender in the air and cold iron and cedar on his skin, and the bond between them pulling taut, and then releasing into something that was just 2 people in a room with every door open. Hers, Flint said. Settled, certain, like bedrock. His, Breyer said. Then, in the driest possible register, finally. He pulled back, forehead against hers. Your candles are not adequate, she said. He laughed, not the startled bark, a real laugh, warm and new and slightly rusty, the sound of a door opening for the first time in 9 years. I know, he said. They're magnificent. The marking was later. Private. In the workshop, by candlelight, because she made candles and the light in her workshop was always warm and always hers. She tilted her head. He looked at her. The amber in his eyes was steady, the wolf always present, the animal layer of a mind that had finally stopped pretending it was only a wall. "Are you sure?" he said. "Silas, I fell on you at a ball. I poured wine on you. I stood on your foot. I apologized to a floor. I told you about wick placement. I introduced a candle to your desk. I have been sure since your face didn't move." He kissed the curve of her shoulder first. Slow. The warmth of his mouth against her skin. Then the bite. The mark. The bond completing in the oldest way, chosen and earned, in a room that smelled like beeswax and lavender and cold iron and cedar, surrounded by candles she had made with her own hands, each one burning steady, 9 hours without guttering, the way she had promised. Flint said nothing. The word that had been running since the ballroom arrived at its destination and rested. Home. The next morning, the palace corridor. Silas was walking to the council chamber carrying a candle in his pocket because he always carried a candle now, and he had stopped pretending there was a reason. Rafe fell into step beside him, looked at him, looked harder. "Silas, your face is doing a thing." "I'm aware." "It's the thing it hasn't done." "I said I'm aware." The king stared at him, then smiled. "Welcome back." Silas walked into the council chamber. 20 advisors looked up. The stone wall entered the room, except the stone wall had a door in it. His jaw was not clenched. There was a candle in his pocket that smelled like beeswax and lavender. The corner of his mouth did the thing. The advisor nearest to him leaned to the advisor beside her. "Is the beta smiling? That can't be right. The right side, the corner, it's going up. Someone write this down." Silas sat at the council table and his wolf was humming warm and steady, and a candle in his pocket smelled like the woman who had walked into him at a royal ball and broken every wall he had ever built by apologizing to the floor and having opinions about lighting and extending courtesy to wax, and being so entirely, catastrophically, magnificently herself that his face had remembered what it was for. "Our face is doing the thing," Flint said. "In public. In front of everyone. And it doesn't even hurt." The door stayed open, and in a workshop in the lower village, Josie Penn was making candles. She was humming. She had wax on her forearms and pins falling out of her hair, and she was telling a fresh batch of beeswax about hexagonal architecture and the dignity of natural materials. Briar, who had been sardonic and steady and honest for weeks, said one thing and then went quiet. "Adequate," Briar said. And if a wolf could smile, she did.